What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dare Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, and we are literally 24 hours away from the NFL draft. So we're going to have a fun show. It's going to be a split show here. We're going to talk about some of the latest NFL news with George Pickens and AJ Brown. And then we'll go into some draft stuff that way, because again, this is a podcast. So for those of you listening on the podcast, obviously by the time you listen to it, it's definitely going to be past the NFL draft. So unfortunately, that draft stuff might not be relevant for you. So I'm going to put the veteran stuff that is still going to be relevant right up at the front for you. And then if you choose so, you can bail out once we get to the NFL draft stuff, if you're listening on the podcast. Or if not, and you want to listen to support and continue on, that's fine. You can also check me and see if the things we talked about ended up being correct. I'm so excited, people. I mean, it feels like we've been waiting forever. And it's been a good offseason. It's had some drama. We've got trades and stuff. And now we get all of our rookie landing spots so that we can sort everything out here. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Oh gosh, I can't believe it. I'm so excited. All right. Let's start off with the George Pickens news. I thought that would be a fun one. Not fun-ish, depending on who you are. Not so fun for George Pickens. It's funny because there are like 10,000 ways that we can look at this, right? I am actually going to pull up a profile for George Pickens, just so you guys on the YouTube channel have some stuff to look at. I realized I accidentally pulled up the stuff for CeeDee Lamb here. I'm trying to get a little bit more innovative with the actual podcast portion or the YouTube portion here. So sharing some more screens and graphics and stuff. So I'm going to do a little screen share here and we'll see if we get technology working good. I think so. Hopefully you guys can see this good. We are talking about George Pickens here. I'm pulling up his profile on Player Profiler here so we can take a look, because obviously last year was absolutely fantastic for him. We always knew that he had just this spectacular talent, right? But the stats in 2025, spectacular. 93 receptions, over 130 targets, nearly over 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns in tandem with CeeDee Lamb, of all people, Jake Ferguson also there as well. And we got a full season of it, right? Because we've had the ups and downs from him in previous years in Pittsburgh, and we knew what he could be. But for him to put together this kind of elite level of a season here, obviously for him, he was probably feeling like that absolutely warranted him. Oh, I see here. There we go. Let me show technology. There we go. Now y'all can see my screen and what I'm sharing here. So we're looking at the stats there for George Pickens on Player Profiler. So obviously when we're looking at him and the year that he had, it's tough to say that anyone, inclusive of Dallas, would give him a massive contract, because at the end of the day, there's still some level of volatility there with him. I mean, you saw it throughout the season, even when obviously he was performing at a high level. There were still some times where that George Pickens, I don't want to say attitude, the George Pickens, frustrations. Yeah, that's better. The George Pickens frustrations pulled through. You could see it, right? So that's still with him. But when he is at his best, I mean, the talent level that he has is, I mean, I guess you could call him like the AJ Brown. I mean, not the AJ Brown. Sorry, I've got AJ Brown on my mind. I was thinking about the Antonio Brown of right now, right? Because we know the talent is so extreme, and if he can just keep it together on the field, it's unmatched, right? The way that he performed next to CeeDee Lamb was incredible here. So we got the news, and I figured this was going to happen because the thing I love about Dallas is that and Jerry Jones in particular, Jerry Jones is really predictable. Say what you want about him, but there's not a lot of mystery in terms of trying to figure out what the Cowboys are doing. We talked a lot during free agency, that we expected Dallas to retain Javonte Williams. They were pretty straightforward about that. They did it extremely early. Obviously, they were trying to work things out with Brandon Aubrey. They got that contract through. Those two things were kind of predictable. And it was also very predictable that they were not going to be able to work out that long-term deal, or not that they really wanted to work out that long-term deal right now with George Pickens, that they were going to more than likely make him play on that franchise tag. And we got the news today directly from Stephen Jones that they are in fact intending to make him play on the franchise tag, which is good. I feel like they were as direct as possible as you could be. Then that means there's not going to be a massive amount of mystery in terms of, the whole, like, remember with Dak Prescott and the negotiations leading up to the season. Obviously, Micah Parsons contract, no contract, and trade was drama right up to the season as well. It feels like we've got pretty definitive clarity, which is critical for us from a fantasy perspective, because I've been looking across social media, because I love to peruse social media and gather the opinions of everybody. And it feels like there's a lot of people that think, okay. Oh, and hey to the chat people. What's up? I see your comments there. Welcome in. I appreciate you all. Real quick here, shout out to Miles Logan. Shout out to Rachel, the Tootsie Pop. And Miles Logan saying, after the season you had, you just got to pay him. I agree on that one. And then shout out to Linda Wells in the comments as well, guys. Welcome in. But when I'm looking across social media, in the comments of people saying, okay, well, if he knows he's playing on the franchise tag, expect a career year for him. I got a bad feeling that because we've got this information of him, and obviously if he's going to be playing on a contract year again, and that's exactly what happened last year. So we can make a direct reference point and say, when George Pickens is playing on a contract year, we know he will perform at the optimal level, and he is going to shoot up draft boards. I mean, at this point, let me pull up I have not looked at his ranking in a while here. Let me see what he is at right now, because I am mildly lower on him. Right now, he is wide receiver 12 in half PPR draft rankings. I have him at wide receiver. We'll see how quick that internet is. I have him at wide receiver. Oh, no, I've got him at wide receiver 12. I thought that I was being a little slightly lower, but he is in that range where he's right around guys like Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Rashee Rice, AJ Brown. Obviously, we've got a lot of question marks around him. We'll talk about that in a second. Garrett Wilson, quarterback situation, Tech McMillan. Love Bryce Young, but obviously, quarterback situation, volume. We've also got the potential, we'll know here real quick. I'm hoping that we don't get Kenyon Sadiq to there, because from a fantasy perspective, that's just not ideal for us in any way, shape, or form. So hopefully that does not happen and we get a better landing spot than that. But there's a lot of questions. Devontae Adams, right? There's a lot of question marks in that area. And you know that if George Pickens is on the field and playing at his optimal level, he will surpass all of those guys that are, potentially all of those guys that are behind him, right? But the problem that I have here is that last year, George Pickens willingly played on a contract year. Like, he knew, right? And that was not, the Cowboys forcing him to do it. I mean, they could have, after they acquired him, they could have extended him, right? But often, it's not a big deal, right? You're just closing out your contract. You're hoping that you perform at a high level, you earn that contract, and they pay you, right? So he was in a positive space last year. We saw it in terms of, obviously, if you were looking at off the field stuff, him and CeeDee Lamb clearly got along well. Dak is obviously an affable guy. So it was a happy situation for him. He knew that he was going to be playing on that final year of his contract, need to perform at an optimal level and get his payday. And unfortunately, now that payday has not come. Now, granted, he's not getting paid chump change on the franchise tag, right? But at the end of the day, if you were expecting after that level of a season to get your money, and now all of a sudden you're not, how motivated are you going to be, right? Frustrations with the team that they didn't give you what you deserved, because obviously contract was deserved. Frustrations that if they didn't want to sign you, they didn't let you go in free agency, or they're not giving you the opportunity. And a trade still could happen, but I do think they intend to force him to play on the contract, right? The franchise tag. So he could be feeling frustrated. And then you get into that area with players, and not even just him, right? Just players in general, where if you're playing on a franchise tag and you're frustrated, you get out there and you tweak an ankle. Are you going to be playing through it? Are you going to say, you know what? Let me make sure that I am extra healed so there are no issues. What if there's a little knee tweak, a little knee sprain or something? So I get worried not to raise him up significantly. Because if he's staying in Dallas, obviously coming off of what he did last year, people will want to invest heavily in him. But I'm just saying that this franchise tag situation, playing on the tag and motivation for a contract, might not be the most ideal situation if he is coming in bitter on the fact that he didn't get the contract. So let's be cautious and not raise him up aggressively here. Jump into the chat here real quick. Shout out to Jason Flint there from DFW. Cool. I'm in Houston, so not too far from you. And then Frank the in the chat. Hey Tara, I love your comment. Never get to catch a live show. Who is the dream landing spot player for you tomorrow? Example, Lemon to the Rams. My dream landing spot for me, and I've said this like 10,000 times. I think I've said it like recently in like 2 Fantasy Pros articles and like multiple YouTube videos. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to be very frustrated. But I actually did plan to talk about this, so this is literally perfect. My dream is Mike Washington Jr. to Seattle. If I could will anything to existence, that's the one right there. I just imagine that speed, that power behind that offensive line and that offense that is extremely run heavy, 3rd most rush attempts in the league last year. Oh God, I just feel like it would pay fantasy dividends forever, in his contract with Seattle. And, year one might start off to the bang. And obviously, if Zach Charbonnet comes back and he is healthy, we could get like a little bit of a dip there, right? But long term, like especially from a dynasty perspective, this is like really critical for me, because when we're looking at dynasty drafts, and we'll be doing videos and stuff and of rookie rankings and rookie drafts and whatnot, hopefully some mock drafts too. But if you're obviously, it's no question here when we're looking at rookie rankings, like it's Jeremiyah Love, the wide receivers, Kenyon Sadiq, and we've got this giant gap to the next running back. And there's a lot of question marks in terms of, because we've got some nice openings, right? In theory, right? In terms of where we could see some of these, potential, when you look at Jadarian Price, he's occasionally mocked as the last pick in the 1st round, but I feel like 2nd round might be more appropriate with maybe the defensive talent that we have, and feel like some of those wide receivers could creep into the back end too. So perhaps we might get him pushed to the early 2nd round there. But, you've got Jadarian Price, and then the question mark is, when it comes to these other running backs, which one, you've got Jonah Coleman, you've got Mike Washington Jr., who is going to go into the best landing spot and give us the most bang for our fantasy buck? And that's what I want to see, because if you're a contender that's got one of those late 1st round picks in Dynasty, like wheels up, right? We will be doing everything to try and get that, because we know how run heavy that system is. And the thing about Zach Charbonnet is that he is a 2027 free agent there. We just saw them not pay Kenneth Walker. And technically speaking, obviously, when we're looking at Zach Charbonnet, he will not garner the level of attention and money that Kenneth Walker did, right? Because even if you say, well, it was the playoff run and Super Bowl, performance that propelled him to, that massive contract that he got with Kansas City, we had proof for multiple years that Kenneth Walker is a lead back, right? There was the annoying push in of Zach Charbonnet, but we know that like NFL teams looked at it and they were like, okay, that's a lead back. That's a 3-down back. Perhaps, Seattle wanted, a committee, but at the end of the day, we have proof that Kenneth Walker in the NFL was a 3-down back. We don't have that same level of proof for Zach Charbonnet, because his usage has been more supplemental, more situational in terms of goal line touches and whatnot. We don't have 800 plus yards, like to reliably look at and say that he would garner that level of a contract. So if he's less expensive, which he should be, Seattle might opt to retain him. But again, they've got a lot of talent to pay. We just saw them give that contract to JSN. They've got defensive talent as well. So I feel like more than likely we see them part ways with Zach Charbonnet, and whoever lands as a rookie in that Seattle system, knowing how excellent their scouting has been, has massive upside to be their franchise back of the future. So, and we've also got the change in offensive coordinator. So perhaps we get less of a committee, but that has existed for a little while, right? But perhaps we get a little bit less of a committee and more of a 60-40 kind of split usage there that would be more beneficial from a fantasy perspective. So Mike Washington Jr. is what I want to see specifically in that offense. I feel like it would be a very beautiful fit. Just I can envision him running right up the middle and just demolishing from a fantasy perspective and touchdowns on top of touchdowns. So that's the one that I want. And I've also got a lot more faith in him. There's concerns around like he can't block and whatnot, but he can catch. We've got proof of that. So if I know that you are massive, you got speed, and you can in fact catch, those are the recipe for they're going to overlook your, like, okay, we'll overlook the blocking a little bit and we can work with that if you've got that level of talent, right? Jumping back to the chat here. What's up to you, Albert Moroccan in the chat? Donald Glaspie in the chat as well from Yosemite. And says Cowboys 71 as well. And then Frank in the chat says, love that match. Mine is KC Concepcion to Buffalo. That one is interesting. And I feel like that one could happen. I am mildly concerned because I love KC Concepcion and I would like to see him. So that's a perfect landing spot for Buffalo, right? In terms of them getting, they got to move on from Keon Coleman, right? I mean, he'll be on the team because he's under contract, so there ain't nothing you can do about that in terms of, maybe cutting him and whatnot, or seeing if you can find a trade partner. But what are you really going to get out of it? And perhaps you can find who was it in Carolina? Not Terry. Was Terrace Marshall? That got sneak traded to Dallas. I want to say you can always find somebody, but at the end of the day, that will no longer be a starter there for Keon Coleman. Terrace Marshall. So they're going to need a receiver, and KC Concepcion would be a fantastic fit for them, right? But I don't love that for his highest upside in fantasy. I would like to see him land in a wide variety of other places. I would love to see him land in San Francisco, because while I do have Ricky Pearsall share selfishly, I would prefer for that not to happen, right? But I do feel indeed that they are going to get a receiver there, and that would be a lovely fit for Concepcion. Jonathan Mingo, you're right. It was Jonathan Mingo. Thank you, Frank. I had Terrace Marshall on the mind. You're right. It was Jonathan Mingo that was traded to the Cowboys from Carolina. Carolina has whiffed at wide receiver. But yeah, San Francisco, because again, love Mike Evans. Love the addition of Mike Evans in free agency to San Francisco. Makes a ton of sense. I think that Evans and Ricky Pearsall will work beautifully off of each other for sure. But at the end of the day, neither one of them, obviously Mike Evans has proven to be healthy in the past, but he's at that age, unfortunately, where we've had back-to-back years where he's dealt with the hamstring injuries. So while I can be optimistic, I do think that we're at that point where him playing a full healthy season is just like a less than 50% chance there. And then obviously Ricky Pearsall has to prove that he can in fact stay on the field. And if those two things can't happen and they remain injured, that would open up the opportunity for whatever wide receiver they add there. And they're adding one for sure. With the amount of top 30 visits they brought in from wide receivers, they're adding somebody, right? It's just a matter of which round they're doing it. Whoever it is would absolutely have the opportunity to ascend to the wide receiver one. So for Concepcion, if I'm looking at his highest upside situation, I think that one would be the highest upside. He could absolutely be the wide receiver one in Buffalo for sure. I mean, love DJ Moore, but I do think that if Concepcion, drops only concern there, but if he can keep himself together and fix the drops and whatnot, he's got the talent to be the wide receiver one of Buffalo. It's just they have so many bodies there, right? And they don't pass enough, unfortunately, in order to. Maybe they with the addition of another receiver, throw more, but they already added DJ Moore. How much more pass volume can you push is my only issue. So I just feel like that is a fantasy kerfuffle in terms of too many talented bodies in there, unfortunately. I'm also seeing in the chat here, as we're talking, we've got Chiefs in here mentioned. Yeah, and I think that one's a real possibility too. Concepcion to the Chiefs is a possibility there because he's very versatile. And I know a lot of people see him and think, slot guy, which would conflict with obviously Rashee Rice, who is dedicated in the slot. It's worked well. I don't see them changing it. But Concepcion doesn't have to be a slot guy. And obviously they're more than comfortable with a small wide receiver. Not that Concepcion is like tiny, right? But they're more than comfortable clearly with a small receiver on the outside as their deep threat. Tyreek Hill, They try to make it work with Xavier Worthy. So you don't have to be a big-bodied receiver for them to want you to be their deep threat receiver there. So I think that he could work as well. And if he falls, and perhaps they trade up from the second round into the back of the first round in order to get him, because I don't think they'll take him with that first pick, right? Because that's a little early. Or perhaps they trade back, something like that. But I think that would also be a lovely fit as well, for sure. And then also the suggestion there in the chat of Carolina, because Carolina stakes at late wide receivers, and they should just take a first round wide receiver and or Sadiq. They're going to add somebody, and everybody and their mother has been mock drafting Sadiq to Carolina, which again, I don't hate it, but my concern is that when we look at Dave Canales in Carolina and the Dave Canales in Tampa Bay, now granted, obviously he has not had a talent like Kenyon Sadiq, so you could make that argument. But yeah, Jason says Chiefs have pick 29. You're right there. But when we're looking at Kenyon Sadiq in Carolina, my concern is that Canales' offense doesn't warrant aggressive volume to tight ends. So I'd like to see Sadiq in a situation where he, could realistically get not just 80 plus targets. I would love to see 100 plus targets. I know that's lofty, right? But that's, high expectations. That's what I would like to see. And I don't think he would get that in Carolina. Like that would be a hefty amount of targets that would be a hefty amount of targets for Bryce Young. That would be a massive increase. I hope they do have an increase in targets for him, because you guys know I like Bryce Young. And when he's been asked to push more volume, he's pushed it successfully. So hopefully they continue to feel more comfortable with pushing volume, but we'll see on that one. Frank in the chat said, Traeger just reported the Rams like Lemon and Sadiq. Interesting on Sadiq. I saw that too. And I've seen some mocks of Sadiq at the first pick there, which does make sense, right? Which does make sense. I could see it happening there. Sadiq's a weird one because you feel like he could go as high as, not a pick 10, because now pick 10 is the Giants. But you feel like he could go as high as pick 10, but as low as like into the late rounds. So there's a wide variety here. He's the one that I feel like is the least predictable, right? Because you feel like for sure when you say like, Lemon to the Rams, right? That makes a lot of sense here. And you feel like you can say Cardell, Tate, Mekhi Lemon, and Jordyn Tyson should be gone by a certain pick, like let's say 15 or so, right? Sadiq's the one that is a big anomaly here. I do think that the Rams, hit my table there. I do think that the Rams are a very, very good candidate there to take a wide receiver. It makes a ton of sense, right? And they're not afraid to take, big risks. Obviously, we know they were trading or shopping around to trade Devontae Adams. Again, we just talked about Mike Evans and the hamstring issues. Devontae Adams had the hamstring issues last year. So when you start to see those guys that are 32, 31, 32, right, and the hamstring injuries start to happen, you start to say, okay, clearly this is the end here, unfortunately, because the talent is there, but the body is just given up. It happened with Cooper Kupp, right? Unfortunately, I hate that. The hamstrings for the 30-year-olds never bode very well there. JP Tay says, agree about the Panthers and the tight end situation. Max Clare would be a better fit in Dave Canales' offense. Yeah, it feels like he likes the big body blockers, right? He's maybe, not that Kenyon Sadiq can't block, but that the pass catcher is less of a concern here for him. But again, they would have to. I do think the reality of them adding a wide receiver makes sense. But I feel like the wide receiver they add, especially because when you look at obviously this would be the final year because Jalen Coker was a restricted free agent. They retained him, so he will be a free agent next year officially. Slot is a very specific role for him, right? Teteroa McMillan, we know his role. So if we're looking to replace Xavier Legette, because obviously that's not working out, I would like to see a big bodied receiver in there, right? So, I would like to see like an Omar Cooper size player, right? So we can get just a couple big bodies on the outside and Jalen Coker on the slot would make a ton of sense to me here, and then increase the pass volume. Got to increase the pass volume there. Let Bryce Young throw it for more than 200 times a game. That's depressing. Let me jump back here at the chat and see if I missed a couple of other ones there. Because we've chat is live. Yes, I forget. I just saw someone. Oh, Donald, thank you. Shout out. Good to see you on Player Profiler. Thank you. I will be streaming from the Player Profiler channel from now forward through the rest of the off season and in season here. So I will be with y'all every single week. We've been going every single week here, but this is the first time we've done it on the regular Player Profiler channel here. We'll be doing that moving forward. Per the Podfather. So I look forward to seeing more of me there. Let's see here in the chat. Frank in the chat says Sadiq feels like Bowers a few years ago when we had no idea where he was going. Yeah, I think so too. And it could be, and mysteries are fun. Mysteries are fun here. And even when it comes to, I'm excited and I'm trying to stay cautiously optimistic here because I love a lot of tight ends in this draft. I feel like this is good, but I love when we get these rich tight end drafts here. And I feel like we've been very blessed in recent years for sure. Every single year we've got at least two talented tight ends going high up here, becoming immediate year one fantasy factors here. Like gone are the days of us saying, okay, we got to wait a few years for these tight ends to develop. No, they want these pass catchers now. They want these big guys out here immediately with the reception. So we've been blessed. And I like a lot of guys in this draft. I feel like when we're looking positionally here, obviously we know heavier defensive in the first round, right? But for fantasy positions here, running back is underwhelming for me, which is why, the landing spot for guys like Mike Washington Jr. are very critical for us because we want the few reliable talents, the few 3-down talents that we have to go to good locations where they can, in fact, potentially be starters there. We're very blessed in terms of lots of wide receiver prospects here. And then tight ends is the other one. Obviously, quarterback's a bust, unfortunately here. But we're blessed at the tight end position as well. So I'm excited. Eli Stowers is going to be an interesting one as well. I'm very concerned about all of the Denver rumors for Eli Stowers. That breaks my heart. I would hate to see that in every way, shape, or form because, again, no insult to Denver whatsoever. But we're talking about an offense where, first of all, we have not, and granted, perhaps Evan Ingram's time passed, right? And it was an Evan Ingram issue, but I think it's just a way too many bodies issue. So we're talking about an offense that will have Courtland Sutton, Jalen Waddle. Then you have the additional, tertiary factors of Troy Franklin and whatnot. Pat Bryant looked excellent at the end of the year. Obviously Marvin Mims, right? And then you throw another body in there. Obviously they are very comfortable at running back with another fantasy conundrum of J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. So there's a lot of checkdowns from Bo Nix to the running back position as well. He's very check down friendly. So how much volume is a tight end going to, it's just I already don't want to touch Courtland Sutton and Jalen Waddle as much as I hate it, right? Because obviously I love both of those guys, but it's just going to be a very messy situation. Great for Bo Nix, but I'm terrified and petrified of Eli Stowers going to Denver and what that is going to do there. Ugh. But yeah, Sadiq, again, one of those ones, like you were saying with Bowers, where the landing spot could literally just be anywhere. Because even last year, we didn't know where Colston Loveland was going, but we knew it would be, before a certain point. We had ample amount of evidence that the Colts were looking at and drafting Tyler Warren, and there was no way he would slip past that. So we knew, right? But again, we don't know where these tight ends are going. So it'll be interesting. Exclusive access to taste. Who will the Cowboys pick in the first round? Will they move that up/back? Let's see if we can, hold on here. I'm going to share my screen here and Where are we at here? Let me go to, oh no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't know if I'm smart enough to do it here, unfortunately. I was going to go to the, I hit the big board up, but I guess I didn't. Let me see if I can figure out how to share it properly here. Okay. We're going to figure out how to share my screen properly here and go to the big board draft here. Okay. Boom. I think I've got it for us here. And then y'all bear with me. This is me trying to figure out technology here. So I think you guys are good in the chat, but for people listening on the podcast, I'm so sorry. This is my first time trying to integrate all of the stuff here with the player profiler big board so that you guys can see more of the stuff here. All right. So I was actually going to go, oh, here we go. Mock draft index and NFL picks here. So the interesting thing about the Cowboys is I kind of feel like if they can, because they're in a weird spot where they're not going to be able to get several of these potentially of the edge rushers here. And we've got Ruben Vane, and these are the most likely players drafted to each pick here. And I kind of feel like the Cowboys are going to potentially trade up to try and get maybe to this Arizona area here in order to get David Bailey, maybe, because edge just makes so much sense to the Cowboys, obviously trying to rebuild that defense. And I think, obviously more investment into the offensive line makes sense, but I think they're very tied to trying to make that investment on defense. And obviously their pick is in a weird spot to where they won't get their ideal pick. So I feel like we either see them trade up if they can in order to get it, or trade back. I know a lot of people are thinking that we could see, especially with the news of George Pickens and whatnot, see them potentially pull a wild card and draft a receiver or something. And obviously, I think for some reason, I feel like people want to see a replacement there at running back for Devontae Williams, or at the very least, I know we're going to get, maybe a day 3 addition there, because obviously the backup situation is not ideal. But I think they either trade up or they trade back and maybe try and accumulate some more draft capital there, because it's a weird position where they're at to get edge. So, and also we've got news, obviously, that Arizona has been tied very closely to potentially drafting Jeremiyah Love. But then I saw additional rumors today saying that they might be trying to pull a bait and switch on people to try and, because everyone knows that they're a really good candidate to trade out of that position. So perhaps the whole Jeremiyah Love thing is to try and entice people to trade with them. Like, hey, if you want this player, you better trade up to come and get it, right? Or else we're going to take him. So they could be doing that whole bait and switch thing in order to get some draft capital, because they make the most sense as a target, right? To potentially trade back them. And obviously, maybe Cleveland or something like that. But the ones that don't make a lot of sense there is once you get to Tennessee, and then, well, though Tennessee technically, but Tennessee and then the Giants seem pretty stand pat in terms of them actually taking their picks there at 4 and 5. So potentially trade up there for the Cowboys makes a lot of sense there for them. I don't think that we will see any funny business, because again, as we talked about earlier with George Pickens, Jerry Jones is actually very straightforward, and I low-key love that about him. I feel like I can predict him very, very well at this point. And so I don't think we'll get any first-round funny business. I think it'll be a very straightforward situation. Jump into the chat here. Cameron Meyer says, I have the 103, and it seems signed and sealed as Tate being the number 1. Now it seems more of a mixed bag. Do you have any opinions? I agree. And maybe wide receiver could be one of those where landing spot makes a difference there, because at the end of the day, and it's possible like that it doesn't go this direction, but I do kind of have a bad feeling that it is going to end up being Carnell Tate to Cleveland. Which has its good and bad, right? Because it's never the worst thing in the world to go into a situation where you're going to be the clear wide receiver 1, right? Jerry Jeudy, has proven time and time again that Steve Smith was correct. Cedric Tillman was the shortest flash in the pan that I've ever seen. I tried to believe in that one. I really did. And that was just the shortest. Woo, that Tennessee class. What was it? Him and I can't remember who the other one was, but yeah, that Tennessee class was a little bit underwhelming at wide receiver when they both came out. But yeah, Cedric Tillman, not it either. So unfortunately, I got a bad feeling that it is going to be Carnell Tate there. And we've got the change in coach. So that's good because quite frankly, I do have more confidence in Todd Monken than I do in Kevin Stefanski when it comes to offensive schemes. Like Kevin Stefanski is pretty straightforward at this point. He loves targeting tight ends. He's run friendly, obviously. So yay for Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. Yay for Kyle Pitts. Boo for everybody else because he loves to just one of the highest clips of tight end target shares. And I don't think that changed. That is his system right there. The only bad thing about, again, potentially there with, and I've seen people make this argument that, yeah, he'll go there and be the wide receiver one, but really the first look will be Harold Fannin Jr. Technically speaking, because we've got the change in regime, we really don't know. But more so than anything, the concern is that they have to figure out the quarterback situation. So if we have that, and then we have Jordyn Tyson, and I think, because obviously Jordyn Tyson is one that I wanted to talk about, guys. Obviously, when we're looking at Jordyn Tyson, he has ascended, right, in terms of the view of him, because there were a lot of prominent, and I won't say in particular, but there was, a couple of in particular draft analysts that were very vocally down on Jordyn Tyson. And a lot of it was due to fear of the injury history, right? Which was not anything massive, but you see the stuff and the videos flying around and concerns that he just might be somebody who is potentially an injury prone and just a hamstring risk for the rest of time, right? A Christian Watson type of deal, which is not really the best comp because Christian Watson didn't have a bunch of hamstring issues in college. So I don't really think that's the same thing, right? But from his pro day, all of a sudden, everyone has jumped back on board. And I say everyone because not me, because I've been very pro Jordyn Tyson. I like him a lot. And I would potentially, if he goes into the better landing spot, potentially be more comfortable with going with Jordyn Tyson over Carnell Tate because he is the higher upside play. But I think Tate's a very safe option, right? So I think you have the flexibility there to play it in terms of confidence in the landing spot. Maybe we don't have to move Tate back all that much if he goes to Cleveland, because at the end of the day, quarterback situations can change drastically over the course of the year. Perhaps they tank, fail, and get them a brand new rookie quarterback next year. So you never know, right? But for right now, for me, it would be between Tate and Jordyn Tyson. And if Tyson gets the better landing spot, because I do like him a lot as a prospect, I could push him higher. And I don't have any issues with Mekhi Lemon. Just I do think that Mekhi Lemon is more of a candidate. Just from what we're hearing, Mekhi Lemon would be more of a candidate to potentially be in that. Again, Kansas City has been one that has been commonly mocked. Miami is one that I think makes a ton of sense. That's the one that I think is going to happen. I think we see Mekhi Lemon in Miami, which long-term is good because obviously he will be the wide receiver one, right? But you'll have to go through the growing pains and just be comfortable with the fact that he's probably going to be performing in that wide receiver 24 to 30 range, which is in year one, right? Because there's not going to be a massive amount of volume and they're rebuilding, right? Which is not a major concern, right? But I still think I would prioritize him further back behind Tate and Jordyn Tyson, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, I try not to let landing spot just massively dictate and make us panic over certain players. But that Cleveland one is high key concerning, right? It really is. And not even just from quarterback and coaching situation, just from the stench of the franchise. Sorry, Eddie Browns fans, but I think you probably feel the same way. Just, success of the franchise is a little obviously skeptical, right? JPT, have you seen, asked Tara, have you seen the videos of Jonathan Brooks? He's my guy and I won't quit him until it's over. And I don't think you should quit him, honestly. It's funny. It's funny. I think that we might see maybe not even a day two, but I think they'll potentially make an addition there at running back because no negative towards Jonathan Brooks. I think they've made it clear that Chuba Hubbard, while he did get paid, I think his job is still in flux, right? Because technically he lost it there to Rico for a little while and then it went back and forth. And obviously the Panthers have proven that your job is not locked in at any point. They will flip on you in a second. And I've got no problem, no criticisms on that. If someone is not working out or someone else is popping off and you make those adjustments, I don't mind that philosophy at all. So I do like what they're doing there in terms of the flexibility at the running back position because they're going with the hotter hand and making it work there. And so I do think that just from a safety perspective, in case the injury situation does not work out with Jonathan Brooks and maybe he gets injured, I don't want to say that, but if something were to happen, over the next several months, you do have to take that precaution and know that you can't go in with just Chuba Hubbard and then Trevor Etienne there. So a day 3 pick, like around 5 or so running back, I think is someone that we might see. And if we do get that, and let's say that it's one of those like fancy sleeper names at running back that everybody loves in college or something, maybe that could decrease the value of Jonathan Brooks there and make him a good trade target for us, because I think he's been a good trade target all off season for Dynasty. But even better if we do get the addition of another running back, even like a round 4 running back, that would kind of open up the door for us to get even like a little bit of decreased value, a little discount on him as well. So I think the potential is there. I'm willing to take the risk, right? I mean, it's scary to take the risk on someone who has repeatedly had these ACL issues. But at the end of the day, like we said, it is entirely possible that he gets out there, performs at a high level in training camp, and they say, you know what? You go be our RB1. We put that draft capital into you a couple years ago. You've never had the opportunity to play. Now that you're healthy, let's give you the opportunity to go out there and show yourself as a lead back. Or he gets out there, splits work with Chuba Hubbard early on and earns and, just outperforms him and steals it. So that's one that I will be paying attention to. As long as he remains healthy in through training camp, I'll probably be taking a lot of late round swings because I don't see his ADP drastically shooting up. I don't think that he will get hyped up to the point where we're going to have to overdraft him in any way, shape, or form, right? We got a comment from Scrap Iron here that says Sadiq belongs in the second round. That's spicy there. And then Jason Flint says Oregon miss you Sadiq, which is very valid, right? Because I know there's a lot of concern around like when you look at like we have more confidence in a Brock Bowers. Sorry if you guys, I'm distracted. This dog is like my dog is just barking profusely. Obviously, someone just came home, and despite the fact that it's literally someone that they see every single day, he's just going to continue to lose his mind and bark even when they come inside. So that's all I hear in my ear. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it distracts me a little. But the production for Sadiq is very interesting as well, because I know that's one of the concerns of saying that, he didn't put up enough in that offense to justify that first round pick, and doesn't have the profile that we would like to see that would give the confidence that he should be, an early pick or right, the level of confidence that we had in guys like, Sam Laporta. Even though he wasn't from a massive school, the volume was just so aggressive and the skill set, the athleticism justified it, right? Colston Loveland, you felt good, and Tyler Warren, you felt very solid about the production and the longevity there. So it'll be interesting, but I feel like the upside for Stowers is very interesting. And he and I've got a couple of, I've got 2 in particular, 2 leagues. Actually 1, now that Isaiah Likely is hopefully going to ascend into this tight end 1 role, and cross our fingers for my dynasty's sake. I need Isaiah Likely to ascend to that tight end 1 role and be highly productive in New York. But it'll be very interesting to see, again, the landing spots for Sadiq versus Stowers, because arguably, and I know some people make this argument and I can low-key kind of get on board with it, the upside might be higher for Stowers, because technically speaking, his breakout once he transitioned to tight end was highly impressive. And obviously, at Player Profiler, breakout is a very good indicator and a very good thing that we like to lean into. So you can look at it and say, like, hey, I know there's a ton of upside here with Stowers once he gets more acclimated to the position, right? Because he hasn't had that longevity of playing it. And we have some, I've heard, from plenty of scouts saying that even, there's a lot of teams that view Stowers as potentially transitioning to wide receiver, which is interesting because I feel like we've had that whole tight end transition to receiver, receiver transition to tight end, and it never really works out from a fantasy perspective. But Stowers feels like somebody who might have the higher upside. So on those dynasty teams where you're sitting there and you miss out on Sadiq, I mean, it might work out to draft Stowers depending on the location, right? Let's talk AJ Brown here. Henry Odom. If AJ Brown is traded to the Patriots, would he move higher in ADP, and what does that mean for Devontae Smith as the number one? I'm happy that we're at least, so despite the fact that, I'm going to take actually a little water break here. Despite the fact that we will not know for sure if a trade is going to happen until June, right? At the very least, we might get some indication of what could happen based off the draft, because I find it hard to believe because Devontae Smith can be the number one. So I feel confidence in that. I think he can. I don't think that they will feel like they have to draft a high-end wide receiver to compensate for AJ Brown. But I find it hard to believe that, putting Devontae Smith aside, that your wide receiver 2 and your wide receiver 3 intentions are Hollywood Brown and Dontavian Wicks. As a Packers fan, right? And someone pointed out that the drop rate did decrease for Dontavian Wicks last year, but arguably you could say, actually, I do kind of want to look up real quick here, because it might have been circumstantial, quite frankly. We're looking at Dontavian Wicks. Just want to peek real quick at the stats last year. Receptions went. I just wanted to verify if receptions went down a little bit. His receptions went down a little bit. Yardage went down a little bit. Correlating to that, it was 30 receptions on 46 targets. So he was a lot more efficient. Prior year was 39 receptions on 76 targets. So massive improvement in terms of efficiency. His drop rate went down significantly. And perhaps, again, Sean Mannion is now the offensive coordinator, so he does know Dontavian Wicks very well. So perhaps there's a certain level of confidence there, right? But man, I don't know if that's the vision. And maybe they intend to be extremely run heavy, because Saquon, I do anticipate that Saquon is going to have a bounce back year, because his overall touches were down significantly compared to the 2024 season, which was just outrageous. So I think the body will be a lot fresher, and so they will be able to lean heavier on him. So perhaps that's the vision, right? But I find it hard to believe that the vision is Devontae Smith anchored by Dontavian Wicks and Hollywood Brown, right? Those years are past him. So depending on what receiver we see here drafted, obviously, I don't think it'll be round 1, but maybe a late day 2, early day 3 pick here. Maybe that'll help give us some kind of indication, right? But I do think Devontae will be the wide receiver 1. And the good thing about Devontae is that I don't think Devontae's ADP would shoot up massively here. I think we would probably at best see him go to, I'm looking at my rankings. Let me get to consensus, so I'm not looking at it with bias here. I think at best we would see him go to wide receiver 17. Yeah, I think 17 makes the most sense as terms of how high we could see him shoot. He's ranked wide receiver 21 right now. I don't see him going above T. Higgins, and I don't see him going above Teteroa McMillan. Maybe Garrett Wilson, but a healthy version, probably not. So 16 is probably the stop point for him, and that's very reasonable. So the value would definitely be there for Devontae Smith, and I would feel good about investing in him as the wide receiver 1. And AJ Brown to the Patriots for sure. He would move probably higher than, especially anticipating some of the additional wide receivers. I could see him move up to wide receiver 9 at most, but I think there's a lot of baked in apathy towards AJ Brown, and the fact that we know he is extremely talented, but he never really achieved that, he never got to that Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, even JSN level of volume, right? Even at like a CeeDee Lamb in the run that he had in 2024 with a healthy Dak Prescott, right? So because we've never seen that long, massive volume from him in a full season, I think that'll keep him from peaking up too high there. So we'll probably not have him creep into the first round. He'll still probably be around second round, mid-second round pick, in my opinion. So higher, but not drastically higher there. And the potential for him in that Patriots offense, it's interesting because obviously I do like Romeo Doubs there, right? But ultimately, him as the wide receiver one, not massively inspiring. But Drake May has been operating with not the most inspiring crew because obviously Stephon Diggs was not the heyday Stephon Diggs that he was before, right? And there's a lot more volume available in that offense. Drake May was working off of efficiency. So when you're looking at wide receivers being added into that offense, always remember that they actually do have a much higher ceiling in terms of pass volume there because of the level of the pass attempts were not massive for Drake May. It was very, very low, actually. And it was really just him being very effective in terms of touchdowns, efficiency, yardage, obviously, and just limiting turnovers there. So I think if they do add AJ Brown, the ceiling could potentially be very high there, but I don't think we will ever see him push up over guys like even Justin Jefferson with Kyler Murray or whoever, right? Or JJ, JJ. I think Kyler will beat out JJ, but for whoever it is at quarterback, I still don't think we'll ever see AJ Brown push above that. So it'll still be decent there. Jalen Hyatt there. Thank you, Jason Flint. That's what I was thinking of when I was talking about Cedric Tillman and Frank in the chat as well. Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman, the disappointing Tennessee players who did not live up to any expectations, sadly, there. Exclusive access to Taste says, who is your sleeper player in this year's draft? Ooh, yes. That should be looked at as blue chip. Oh, that's a good question there. I don't know how deep you want to go there. That should be looked at as blue chip. I think it is. I like Jacoby Lane a lot. And I won't say that he should be looked at as a blue chipper, but I think that he is being undervalued a little bit and can be, depending on landing spot, could be very intriguing. Again, it's a weird one because you can't say quarterback. You can't really say a running back because I think the weird thing about the running backs is that I think a lot of them are going to translate to more role players rather than 3-down backs, right? Like even if you look at look at the Penn State running backs, right? You can look at them and say, okay, I think, there are roles that we can play here, but are we really going to translate into a specific 3-down high upside role? So, and even that I don't feel like would be considered like a sleeper situation. So I think that's the direction that I would go, would be Jacoby Lane. Because I think that's my one there that I would look out for sure. Let's see here. Let's talk about Nick Singleton and best landing spot for him. Kid was a stud as a freshman. Let's see if let me pull up. I still have the big board up, so let me add that to the stage there. And then let's take a look here. I'm going to have to search Singleton. Oh no, psych. Oh no. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Well, we're going to have to bail out on that concept. Oh, well, there. That's okay. I'll go over here and see what I can find on my other screen here. Let's see here. So he is also one of those ones where I kind of feel like because we didn't really get to see a whole bunch of we got no massive use. Like we didn't get massive Senior Bowl use. Did he get injured? He was supposed to play at the Senior Bowl, did not end up doing it. And then we didn't get a lot of combine stuff there for him as well. I feel like he is one of those guys who could be drafted to an interesting spot. Like maybe a Jacksonville would be a nice fit for him in terms of playing off of Bashal Tutin very well there. So maybe that's a good landing spot for him. I like him as well. I mean, in terms of the running backs, like the class as a whole is very frustrating, but I feel like that's one that could sneak through and be very interesting for sure. Easy E says, regarding my dog, must be a small dog. They intend to be heard. Yes, a tiny, tiny little dog that makes the loudest noise as if he's going to do something about it if someone were to enter the house. Yeah, right. JPT says, not a fan of Sadiq either. He was outplayed by Terrence Ferguson, and then Jamari Johnson, Oregon. Not sure, more than number 3 target on most teams, purely athleticism, upside shot. For sure. And that's I can't remember who else was saying it in the chat, saying that maybe it was a usage issue. It might have been the case there. But again, I slightly agree with that in terms of why I maybe would prefer to shoot for the potential upside of Stowers, right? Frank in the chat says, would you rather have Patriots AJ or now Eagles number 1 Devontae? Oh, dang, that's a good question. And this is no offense to Jalen Hurts, because I am a Jalen Hurts defender. I will be till the end of time for sure. But I would have to go with the one that has the more higher upside quarterback. And sadly, yeah, it's going to be Drake May. So I would take AJ Brown to the Patriots and go with that one right there, just because of if I'm like apples to apples, right? I think I would choose AJ Brown with Drake May, right? But in terms of talent-wise and upside, I would very much be interested to see Devontae as the clear wide receiver 1 there, because I think he can truly ascend to a massive volume role. And whenever there's been no AJ, he has, right? It'll be interesting, but I think I would lean towards AJ. Oddly enough, one of my dynasty teams has AJ, so we'll see how that works out. But I think I lean towards AJ on that one for sure. And then Leaving says AJ motivated for 1 season might be better for fantasy for Smith for sure. I always get worried about the long-term value of a wide receiver that cries his way out of a location and then maybe goes on to underperform elsewhere, right? But given the team situation, the quarterback situation, I do think that it won't be highly risky there. So I would still be perfectly fine with it, especially because, again, all skepticism there. We're probably not going to see a massive leap there in ADP. There's a limit, right? Especially if we're looking at it, like, let's say, because you can't go above, obviously, Puka, Jamar, Jackson, CD, Amon-Ra, right? You're not going, well, you can make the CD argument, but really, probably not, right? Just because he has been, at least even with George Pickens, just a high volume guy for sure. And then Nico is one of the weird ones for me, right? Because of the whole CJ Stroud having to stay upright in the offensive line. So I need to see the investment of the Houston Texans offensive line there. And then obviously Chris Olave. I've got a lot of high hopes for Chris Olave. He is one that I want to believe in what we saw at the end of last season with Tyler Shuck. I want to believe in it. I want to believe in Tyler Shuck and the connection there with Chris Olave. I'm just kind of curious as to see which wide receiver they draft to add there, because for sure they're going to add a receiver. It's just a matter of at what point they do it. And my fear, I don't think they're going to do it with that first pick. I don't. And it's been a popular mock to say that maybe if a Cardinal Tate were to slip, that would be an interesting location, because obviously he would play well off of Chris Olave. But we'll see. We'll see on that one. But obviously when we're looking at that, he could go up above a Chris Olave, right? But I think that would maybe be the break point. And then you've got Malik Neighbors, right? In terms of if Malik Neighbors is on the field and healthy and no issues, like you're going to take Malik Neighbors over AJ Brown, regardless of the situation. Let's see here. Let's close out the chat. Oh yeah, we're at an hour here. Let's go through and see if I miss any comments. Jason Flint says, I love Singleton to the Seahawks. He played through a broken foot this past season. He could, especially if Zach Charbonnet comes up. I do get worried about the whole true 3-down back situation, but there are other bodies there. And obviously I do like Emmanuel Wilson. So I think they could play well off of each other. And then Zach Charbonnet, when he comes back, that, it'll be interesting. And also, one of the things that I meant to touch on as well was the fact that the Seahawks could be trading out of that pick. So for all of the mocks that have been like Jadarian Price at the end of the first round to the Seahawks, it looks like there's a high possibility that might not happen, which is very interesting because if we do that, that lends credence. So the further back that the Seahawks trade opens up the opportunities for guys like Mike Washington Jr. and Nick Singleton as well to potentially go there, which would be our preference there. I would like to see Jadarian Price in Minnesota, but I have also heard a wide variety of rumors that the Jags, if Jadarian Price does slip, that the Jags would be interested in taking him. And that one is that one would be interesting. But I think that one is a real possibility there. That also adds credence to the fact that I do think we're going to see a running back added to Jacksonville. The fact that they would be interested in Jadarian Smith does concern me because my thought process is that the Jags would add a running back, but would add one that is a pass specialist. So my concern would be if they're looking at players that are not a pass specialist, right? And Jadarian Price, I believe, can catch, right? He showcased it at the combine. I think it's a situation of obviously he was not asked to, right? Because it was not needed. So I don't really panic if you don't have massive or proven production as a pass catcher in college, if you were in a 2-back system, because often you're not going to be called to do that, right? So it's not a major concern here. But the fact that they would not be adding someone whose specialty is more of home run hitting, early down kind of situation would make a lot more sense is kind of like, perhaps the confidence in Bashal Tutin might not be there in the way that we thought. So that's interesting. JPT says, are you on the Ted Hurst hype train, Tara? I'm not. My preference in terms of that area of wide receiver is Denzel Boston. I like him a lot, and I ideally would like to see him, as long as he doesn't go to Buffalo. I don't want to see him replace Keon Coleman because right. Again, no offense to Buffalo. Obviously, they're going to draft a receiver, and whoever they draft is going to be good for their team. It's just not going to be great for us from a fantasy perspective because we just don't need more talented bodies added. Like add a body that we don't need, right? Someone that we were not targeting in rookie drafts. Why don't you add that on a late day too? Someone that we didn't care about, but that's not going to happen. Sadly, they're going to take one of our players that we care about and break our hearts there. But no, I'm not on the Ted Hurst hype train. My boy is Denzel Boston is the one that I kind of prefer there in that range. I would love to see him go to Baltimore. That's my landing spot. My Denzel Boston in Baltimore landing spot opposite of Zay Flowers is my happy area because I feel like they play very well off of each other. That would not dip into Zay's production significantly because obviously 2 very different bodies, 2 very different players, 2 very different roles there. And it would make a ton of sense. So that's my happy place for him. That's my preference in terms of rookie wide receivers in that kind of area of prospects. I'm not on the Ted Hurst hype train, sadly. From Linda Wells, Zachariah Branch would definitely be a Kansas City Chief. Yeah, that's a good point. Andy Reid prefers small, shifty, explosive wide receivers with criminal records. Tyree Hill, Kadarius Toney, Rashee Rice. In his defense, I can kind of understand. At least it wasn't like a massive criminal issue. It was just kind of like one of those silly, like, I don't know, maybe like a power trippy thing. So I cannot believe he got arrested for that. That's crazy. That's crazy there. But anyway, that's funny. But yes, I think that could also be a good fit for him. That's funny, Lindell Wells. You got me on that one. Leaving Coleman to the 49ers for a 4th. I don't think that, well, you know what? They've always been loose with their draft capital there, but I don't know if they would do it, especially considering that they've just come off of dealing. And Keon Coleman and Brandon Ayuk personalities are not the same thing, but Mike Shanahan Kyle Shanahan is obviously, he's a no nonsense kind of guy. And we kind of saw that with Brandon Ayuk. Because obviously remember he had the fantastic little breakout there, I was going to say freshman year, his rookie season, and then second year it underwhelmed significantly because he was kind of in the doghouse. Snap count was limited there for a while. Kyle Shanahan didn't feel like he was putting forth the effort that he needed to in practice, not running routes to the level that he needed to, putting full effort, which screams that he would absolutely hate Keon Coleman. Not that obviously, not the same type of issue there, but if you've already got a reputation for not putting forth the most effort, I don't think it would be a good fit. So I don't think he would do it after this Brandon Ayuk traumatizing situation there. And then from exclusive access to Taste, do you think Malachi is a better edge than Bailey? And is he going overlooked this year? No, I think Bailey is better, but I think he could be going overlooked for sure. And that's another interesting one to see if maybe he could be a good fit for Dallas. I know we had the question earlier about Dallas, and perhaps that could be the better fit there. I do still have the big board up here. I still think that right here is that sweet spot for Dallas potentially trading up right there. Makes a ton of sense. And obviously they have more than enough draft capital to do it for sure. But that's it. Oh, and then I do want to say JP Tay in the chat saying it is 2 a.m. in the, what is that? The UK, I think that's what the flag is. It's very tiny, but I love to see the international audience here. So let's go on that one. But I appreciate you all joining in. I've got children to get to bed here. Hopefully they did all the things that they were supposed to do to get themselves. They're very, I put my 9-year-old, I've got two boys, 9 and 6. And I like to give my 9-year-old authority when I'm working. I'm like, hey, you do X, Y, and Z. And he's become quite the commander, sometimes a little bit of a tyrant, perhaps, but yeah, he gets it done. They love when I work late. So yes, which is good because obviously we're very close to the NFL season. So they love that when I'm working late and they can stay up a little later. And yes, but that is it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. Chat was awesome here again. We're now on the Player Profiler regular channel here. So I will be with you guys every single, if you have not been on the show, because we've been going for a while now, but I'll be with you guys every single Wednesday night, 8 p.m. EST. And next week, obviously, we will have a ton to talk about because we will now have all of our landing spots. So next week will be rookies, 10,000 questions, right? So I appreciate you all tuning in. Again, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast. Appreciate your support, available on all podcast platforms. And of course, appreciate your support on my YouTube channel as well. It's Tara Time. I drop videos there every single week, and we will be dropping a ton of videos immediately after this draft. So make sure that you are followed and tuning in. All right, I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a wonderful evening. And if you're into the NBA, enjoy the NBA playoffs. I am not, because I did not like that Victor Wembanyama concussion. That messed me up there. Hopefully, concussions in basketball now. I can't escape it. It's football. You would think, but now we've got them in basketball too. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the draft.